Docify supports Razor pages in CS/HTML format to enable dynamic content which is resolved at the compile time. Includes placeholder on pages, layouts, and assets will be replaced with the corresponding HTML content generated as a result of evaluating of Razor page. Context model is defined in xarial.docify.base.context NuGet package. Includes can also contain custom attributes defined in the include front meta, similar to pages and layouts. This metadata can be defined on multiple levels: in the include itself, default values, in the include reference, on the page, or in the global configuration. Docify will merge the data from different levels according to the hierarchy. In this video, we'll create new include for the Docify documentation site. This include would allow to add us a shortcut links for each component from the standard library, and that link will point to the corresponding folder in the GitHub repository. All the items of the standard library of Docify, such as components, plugins, and themes, are open source, and all of them have a corresponding folder in the GitHub repository. So for example, this is a folder for the cookie consent component in the GitHub repository, so user can inspect assets, includes, and other files which are part of this component. But it would be much easier to have a corresponding URL on the documentation website. So like in this case, I can directly go into the components folder. I can also activate different component and browse to its folder. And in this video, we will implement this functionality by using includes in Docify. Includes are CS/HTML Razor pages placed into the special _includes folder. So for example, site header is already include in our site. Let's use console and create a new Razor page. We're going to give it a new name, library source reference, so it creates as a CS/HTML and the corresponding code behind. We're not going to use code behind, so I'm just going to remove that file. It is sufficient for Docify engine to only have CS/HTML file. File will be automatically compiled and executed when the include needs to be resolved. However, we can improve development experience and enable IntelliSense by creating a new project and installing the NuGet package. Let's create new class library project. We're going to set the framework to .NET Core 3.1. We can remove the default class. And now we can install NuGet package, which contains all the necessary declarations of our context model. We need to do .NET add package xarial.docify.base.context. Now we can use interfaces from the DLL. So firstly, I'm going to assign the corresponding model to my include. I need to select xarial, Docify, base, context, iContext model. Now you can use Razor page syntax in order to define include. We will extract the repo link attribute from the page metadata. We will extract the base URL attribute from the include metadata. For that, we first need to define the metadata for this include. So I'm just going to use a front matter and use an empty parameter for now, and it's going to be overridden by the setup. I'm going to add some links concatenation in order to compose the full URL. Finally, I will check if this link is not empty and create a simple href HTML tag. We can build our project to make sure that we do not have any compile errors, but it is not necessary for Docify engine. As compiling the project will add some extra folders for binaries, we are going to add those folders to exclude list for our site. We will also add the project itself into our exclude list, so it does not get compiled to the final site. All of the pages of the standard library inherit the library layout. So we can look at this component and it inherits the parent layout, which is library. Let's go and add this include into the layout itself, so we will not need to add include to each individual page in our library. We will use include syntax to add include just above the content. We can reference include parameters using the $, and we're going to specify the base URL for this include. base URL is a common part which we're going to use for all of our links. So you can just copy that from here and specify it in our layout. Now let's add the repo link attribute into the metadata of our page. Let me just copy the name of this attribute, and I can simply insert it into the metadata of the page. And for this particular component, I can just select the remaining part of our full URL, which is going to be components lib cookie consent. So that URL is going to be composed in our include, and the corresponding href will be added into the HTML. Let's serve the site to see the result. I will just navigate one level up and call docify serve command. We can open the site, navigate to component which we just changed, and we can see the URL, and if we open that URL, it brings us to the corresponding folder in the GitHub repository. So for other components, we don't have that URL yet because we haven't specified the metadata in our pages. Let's slightly modify the look of our URL and include image. So firstly, I'm just going to bring new image into our assets. I will create a folder images and paste an SVG image in there. So let me fast forward the video and just simply modify the HTML to include the image HTML tag together with href. Let's validate the result and serve site again. When I follow the link, library, components, cookie consent, you can see there is now an image next to the URL and it still redirects to the correct location in the Git repository. Let me now fast forward the video where I have added all the necessary attributes for each page of my library. So you can see all of the items in the library, components, plugins and themes now have the corresponding view source code URL. So let's navigate to the base theme. This theme itself has some nested components, such as date, legal, and page language. So I would want to also have a separate link to those components as well. So for example, for date component, I want it to be redirected to this URL. I can use the same include, however, I need to do some minor modifications. In order to make our include more flexible, we will also want to read the repo link from its parameters, in addition to reading this from a page. We will use the include parameter as a priority, so we'll firstly try to find that repo link parameter from the include data itself. So if it is not specified, we're going to look at the page. So in this case, we're not going to change our existing pages. Now we can simply call this include with the repo link parameter to add a custom URL within the page. Let's open the file for base theme, navigate to the date component, and use library source reference include, and also specify the repo link parameter. So in this case, our relative URL for this component is going to be themes lib base includes date.cs HTML. So let me copy that into my clipboard and paste it into the include parameter. I will quickly copy this include to other components and modify the value of URL. Now I can serve the site to validate the result. Now when we activate the page for the base theme and go to its components, you can see there is a new URL against each of the component, and this URL redirects to corresponding file in the GitHub repository. Thank you for your time.